When we define the word probability, what we're saying is the likelihood that something will happen. And in this situation, there are times when you have a very high probability that something will happen, and sometimes a very low probability. We will begin on just kind of working through some of the basics. An example of something that has probability is a spinner. You spin the wheel and you'll get different answers. Each of these parts are called sectors, and as we know, each sector is 1/6 of this circle. So that gives you some ideas on what the probability is of rolling certain letters. If the arrow is spun once, what outcomes are possible? Well, we look at this and we know that we have outcomes of A, B, and C. And when we look at this, we need to ask ourselves which letter is most likely to be spun. And you can see that in this we have 3 A's, we have 1 C, and 2 B's. So the arrow is most likely to stop on A because there are more sectors are labeled A. And the opposite is true because there's only one sector that's labeled C. We can conclude that C is the least likely to be rolled. So it says list the possible outcomes in order from least likely to most likely. So we know that C has the fewest places where we could roll it. B has 2 and A has 3. So that tells us that A is most likely. Moving on, which outcome is twice as likely as the outcome of C? Well, there's only one C. There are 2 B's. So B right there. If the arrow is spun many times, then about half the outcomes are likely to be which of the following? About half the outcomes will be A because that's about half of the circle, and the likelihood that it will be about half is pretty high. If the arrow is spun many times, what then are the fraction of the spins are most likely to stop in sector C? And because we know sector C has 1 sector out of 6, it has about a 1/6 likelihood of being rolled. In 60 spins, then, that would translate to, out of 60 spins, 1/6 of 60 spins is about 10. So we can kind of guess, only with more so than a guess. It's roughly estimating that out of 60 times, about 10 of those will be in sector C, which moves on to this concept of probability. The probability of an outcome can be expressed as a number ranging from 0 to 1. So if the outcome is impossible, then the probability is 0. If the outcome is certain to happen, the probability is 1. It will happen. And every kind of outcome that is in between that is going to be held as a fraction between 0 and 1. So let's use the spinner to complete lesson numbers 8 through 10. What is the probability that the arrow will stop in sector D? Okay, I'm looking through here. Do you guys see a D? I don't see a D. For once, I feel very sure that the probability is 0 because the letter D is not on the spinner. So let's see, how do I word this? So that we're certain it is an impossible outcome. I need to make sure that I'm writing the correct. So D is an impossible outcome. Don't you feel good that we got that cleared out? What is the probability that the outcomes will be one of the first 3 letters of the alphabet? Well, we have an A, a B, and a C, and the probability to have any one of these is going to be 1, because every sector of the spinner is labeled with one of those 3 outcomes, A, B, or C. So the outcome is certain to happen. Yay! Don't we love this? What is the probability the arrow will stop in sector C? Well, it is 1/6. Remember, we go from probability as a fraction between 0 and 1, and because it represents only 1/6 of our options, or 1/6 of the possibilities that we can have, then we say 1/6. Now, we're going to work on standard cubes. This is a dot cube. If you need to grab one from your house, great. They're numbers that represent the dots on the face. If you take a good look, you'll know that our numbers range for, there's a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are the possible outcomes. If the dot is rolled just once, which number is most likely to end on top and why? We can say this, none of the numbers is most likely to end up on top because each number is equally likely to end up on top after one roll. If the dot cube is rolled many times, how often would we expect to roll a number greater than 3? Well, we know, looking at this, we have 4 possibilities of it being greater than 3, 4, 5, or 6. And so that tells me that about half the time we can roll a number about greater because half of our options are greater. If the dot cube is rolled once, what is the probability of it rolling a 7? We know this! 0! There are no 7s! Yay! With the dot cube, what is the probability of it rolling a 1? And I've got to make sure that I am putting this correctly. It is going to be 1/6, because out of those options, we have 1/6 that it will likely roll. I need to make sure I'm answering that. Yes. And how would we describe the likelihood of rolling a 6 with one roll of a dot cube? 1/6 of a chance means that it is, this is crazy because we have our options, very likely. We can scratch that out. We know that that is not true. 1/6 is not a great chance. Just as likely as not, maybe. Unlikely, who knows? And certain, we can scratch that out. When we're looking at this, 1/6 means that it is fairly unlikely because you have a 1 in 6 chance that it will be rolled a 6. So I would say that's low. So we say it's unlikely. Now, you will hear in weather where they say certain chance of rain. In the event, it's expressed as a percent, which is another form of fractions. Sometimes they'll say 80% rain. When we hear that, we know it will most likely rain. So, the chance of an event is something expressed as a percent from 0 to 100%. 20% chance, most likely not to rain. 100% chance of rain, they are certain it will rain. The weather forecast stated that the chance of rain is 40%. According to the forecast, is it more likely to rain or not to rain? It is more likely to not rain because it is a lower percentage. If the meteorologist said that the chance of rain is 80%, then we know that this means that the chance it will not rain is 20%. And that is a very low likelihood. So it seems fairly certain that it will rain. Now, they wanting you to jump into probability X options. We are going to pass on that. But this is the investigation. Wasn't that hard? Please be on the lookout for probability. You'll start to see it all the time. You'll see it on the news. You'll see it with the weather report. And so I encourage you, go check out the weather and see what the likelihood of weather is in your area.